As a premier community in Hampton Roads, James City County strives to maintain a high quality of life for all citizens through sound fiscal management and legislative actions. In an ongoing effort to increase transparency, your Board of Supervisors holds public meetings to garner citizen input before making important decisions. Here is tonight's meeting agenda. Stay tuned. The Board of Supervisors meeting will begin shortly.
Everyone ready? I call to order this meeting of the James City Service Authority Board of Directors for a regular meeting. Mr. Powell, good evening.
Good evening.
Would you please call the roll?
Mr. Eisenhower. Here. Mr. McGlennon.
Here.
Ms. Larson.
Here.
Mr. Hippel.
Here.
Ms. Sadler.
Here. Are there any presentations?
No, ma'am.
Any public comment?
No,
Speaker
ma'am.
cards? Consent calendar consists of 2 items: a contract award for audit services, minutes adoption.
Move to approve the consent calendar.
All right, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Public hearings. We do have one this evening.
Yes, ma'am. It is my pleasure to present the fiscal year 24 proposed budget for the James City Service Authority. Fiscal year 24 is the second year of a 2-year budget, and it continues to address the 6 key areas established in the current year's budget. Those being the sustainable long-term water supply, resource conservation and protection, modernizing infrastructure, facilities, and technology, succession management, regulatory compliance, and affordability and financial resilience. The next slide provides an overview of the fiscal year 23 adopted budget, the 24 planned budget, and the 24 proposed budget. The fiscal year 24 proposed budget increases $499,878 from the fiscal year 23 adopted budget, a 2.1% increase. The fiscal year 24 proposed budget is about $14,000 higher than the fiscal year 24 planned budget. So in terms of the bottom line, it is very consistent with what was planned last year. The next slide highlights the major differences from the fiscal year 23 budget. The 2 major differences are facility fee revenue and interest income. As discussed previously, facility fees have been less than expected so far in fiscal year 23, and the estimated revenue from facility fees has been adjusted and reduced accordingly and significantly for fiscal year 24. At the same time, interest income is projected to increase fairly significantly, almost offsetting the reduction in the facility fee revenue. Other differences worth noting include an increase of $600,000 in revenue in the water fund due to the service charge increase in accordance with the multi-year plan from the 2020 rate study, an increase of $814,595 for employee compensation and benefits, a reduction of $350,000 in the repair and replacement reserve fund, an increase of $260,000 for the enterprise software implementation, and $158,642 for 3 new positions which were included in the fiscal year 24 planned budget. The next slide provides a summary of the proposed 24 revenues and expenses. While I noted the contribution to the repair and replacement fund decreased this year, I would note that the proposed budget still does include a contribution of $1.65 million to reserves, which represents 6.7% of the budget. We like to show the next slide every year, which shows the decline in daily residential water consumption per person and shows that our customers have pretty dramatically reduced consumption over the last 10 to 15 years, with 22 being the lowest on record, as you can see. An overall 3.5% increase is proposed for water charges. There are no increases proposed for sewer charges. If approved, a customer that uses 5,000 gallons of water per month would see their monthly bill increase from $45.71 to $46.71, an increase of exactly $1. Also, if approved, JCSA would continue to have the lowest water rate in the region for a 5,000 gallons per month customer, a residential customer, and the third lowest combined water and sewer bill among the 18 Hampton Roads localities. The proposed budget strikes a balance between funding current needs and planning for future investments and reflects JCSA's motto of working today to protect tomorrow. The board will have a work session on the budget 2 weeks from today, with the adoption scheduled for your next regular meeting on May 9th. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions?
Not a question. I just wanted to make a couple of quick points here. The first is to say that it is important for folks to recognize that the one fee is a result of a slowdown in residential development, and some of that is obviously due to the broader state of the economy. Some of it's also due to policies the board's adopted in recent years, and I think that's a positive thing. And then the other item that I would note from your presentation is and you highlighted it well, the decline in the household usage of water. The fact that we've got a lot more water efficient appliances out there and fixtures really is paying off, and I hope we'll continue to look for any ways we can find to incentivize people to move toward more water efficient appliances and fixtures. Thanks, and great job.
Anyone else? No?
Madam Chair, before you close the public hearing, one other item I should have mentioned. The only other fee increase proposed in the budget is we have been increasing the grinder pump maintenance fee every year. It's proposed to go from $400 this year to $425.
With that, are there any speakers this evening for the public hearing?
No, ma'am.
All right. Well, then with that, we'll close the public hearing. No actions required this evening. The budget is scheduled for adoption on May 9th, 2023 at our regular meeting. And then from there, we'll go to board considerations, contract award, water tank engineering services. Mr. Powell?
Thank you. A request for proposal was advertised for water tank engineering services for all of JCSA's elevated ground storage and pressure water storage tanks. We have a total of 39 such tanks, which range in size from 5,000 gallons to 1.25 million gallons. The scope of work includes inspections, rehabilitation, repair design assistance, and updating JCSA's long-term tank maintenance plan. 6 firms responded to the RFP. Tank Industry Consultants was selected as the most qualified. They have previously completed satisfactory tank evaluation work for JCSA. Staff recommends approval of the resolution authorizing award of the water tank engineering services contract to Tank Industry Consultants.
Move that motion.
Okay. Mr. Powell, can you please call the roll? There, with board considerations, we need to amend our meeting calendar. Mr. Powell?
Yes, just at your last meeting, you did decide to hold a retreat on April 28th at 9 a.m. at the JCSA Operations Building, and I would recommend you amend your calendar accordingly.
To amend the calendar to include that meeting and time, provided, of course, that you do provide coffee.
Will do.
Is that part of the record?
Okay.
All right. Would you please call the roll?
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye. Board requests and directives?
Yeah, I only had one thing, and I was curious. I know we had a contractor complain about the connection for firefighting and everything. Where are we on having the rate study people take a look at that and get back to us? What kind of time frame are we looking at?
I have spoke with them or communicated with them last week, and the plan at the moment, the hope is that it will be ready for you to review at your retreat on the 28th.
Okay, very good.
That's
Thank
what
you.
I'm hoping.
That's all.
I can't promise that, but that's what I'm hoping.
General Manager's update.
I have no further
Nothing
updates.
else. Okay, very good. Do I have a motion to adjourn until 1? Oh, we changed that. No, 25th is first
That's correct. You're
Till
adjourning
1
to the
p.m. on
25th
April
at 1 p.m. for the
25th.
budget work session.
for the budget business meeting.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very
Adjourned.
much.
Thank you.
All right, call this meeting, James City County Board of Supervisors, at 5:08 PM for a regular meeting on April 11th, 2023. Roll call, sir, please.
Ms. Sadler? Ms. Sadler represents the Stonehouse District. Mr. Eisenhower?
Here.
Mr. Eisenhower represents the Jamestown District. Mr. McGlennon?
Here.
Mr. McGlennon represents the Roberts District. Ms. Larson?
Here.
Ms. Larson represents the Berkeley District and is Vice Chair of the Board. Mr. Hipple?
Here.
Mr. Hipple represents the Powhatan District and is Chair of the Board. Sitting to my far left is Adam Kinsman, County Attorney. I'm Scott Stevens, County Administrator. It's my pleasure to be Clerk to the Board.
Thank you, sir. All right, next we'll have, before our moment of silence, we have a pledge leader, and our pledge leader is from the Berkeley District. So Supervisor Larson, you have the roll.
Thank you so much. I just want to introduce Olivia Mitchell. Olivia is our pledge leader this evening. Olivia is here today with her sister Eloise and her mom, Mrs. Allison Mitchell. Her mother is a teacher at Clara Bird, where Olivia is a student. Olivia likes digging in dirt for bugs, planting vegetables with the WJCC SHIP program, dancing and singing. She does soccer, ballet, and tap. And in the summer, she has twice in 21 and 22, she has completed the WRL Summer Reading Challenge. She also likes to bike the Parkway, movies under the stars, Kiwanis Kid Train and biking and walking the Capitol Trail with family. So Olivia, thank you so much for being here this evening. After you're finished with the pledge, if you'll come up, I have a certificate for you, okay? So just give us a minute for the moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, and for the liberty and justice for all.
All right, next our public comment. So I'll go ahead and open up the public comment. And our first speaker card is Peg Borman.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Stevens, Mr. Purse, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Peg Borman, 17 Settlers Lane in downtown Lightfoot. I'm here to give you another dose of my trash talk. As I told you last month, we had, remember this? We had the 45th annual countywide litter cleanup. And it's coming up this Saturday, and I'm real excited about it because we've got a lot of interest shown this year. When I was afraid when we started out we wouldn't get enough people to do it, but it's growing. We have 23 right now groups that are individuals throughout the county, and we're hoping that a few more will be coming in before the end of the week. I want to give you the breakdown. At first, I thought I was getting people signed up that was in Stonehouse, and it turned out they were in Powhatan because I get confused with those lines. But anyway, we have 6 from Stonehouse, 5 from Powhatan, 5 from Jamestown, 2 from Roberts, and 2 from Berkeley. we hope there's I'm hoping there's a few more that come in from the lower end of the county, but, I'm up there pushing trash and talking trash, and so I don't have much help in the lower part. But anyway, it's, the litter will be stacked in one place in each area that's being cleaned, so that instead of it's going to the Jolly Pond this year, I'm going to miss all the people coming out, and I'm going to miss fussing at them for bringing things out of the attic and the garages, but but this way we know it's going to be picked up on the roadside. And because the team from the Jolly Pond Convenience Center will be picking up all the trash and taking it. At 3 o'clock, they think they can do it in that length of time, so I hope they will. But we're hoping that it will be more cost effective and we can utilize our DEQ grant much more useful to us. And so we have about that many, about 100, maybe 150 volunteers. So if you get out there, most of them are going to be out around 10 o'clock. So if you want to know where they're going, give me a call. And, or you can call. I got a little sheet here to cheat on. But if you want to go out and see where they're picking up, it might be useful to you all. And then we're going to have the picnic appreciation on June the 17th at Will Barnes Shelter in Veterans Park. And so we hope that we'll have a good turnout for that. It's at 4 o'clock. We're going to cook again, so instead of having box lunches. So I hope, but y'all, please get out there and talk that trash for me, would you? And then the 22nd of April, if you're reminding you of that, we're going to have a tree planting out at Freedom Park. And so it's 10:30, if you can get to that. And I know there's several of you who will be available, but some of you won't. But whatever you can do, we appreciate all that you do for us. And so it's kind of fun to talk about trash tonight. So I'm excited, and I hope this weekend the weather holds. So thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you. All right, our next speaker is Tony Deli. Did I mess it up?
Probably can't read my handwriting.
That's all right.
I'll take the blame for it.
No, thank you. Appreciate the cover.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Ebel. I apologize, but I'm Tony Darley from Sun Tribe Development, and I'm actually going to read off this. I normally speak off the cuff, but I just found I was speaking this afternoon, so bear with me. We are speaking in response to the resolution on the agenda, which would delay consideration of solar projects for 12 months. Sun Tribe submitted a concept plan to the county last October, spent 2.5 months working with planning staff, addressing comments, and then submitted a formal special use permit application in March. And I can speak for the lead developer. It's been a quite enjoyable experience working with staff up until this point, doing his best and our best to make sure this is a community-focused project. Just wanted to throw that out there. Going off script, sorry. Sun Tribe understands that the county's desire to include additional uses in the comprehensive plan, but respectfully request this project, which we've been working with the landowner for more than 2 years, not be unreasonably delayed just because it's one of potentially hundreds of uses not specifically identified in the plan. Solar, as a well-cited land use, is a passive neighbor with tremendous benefits to the county at no cost to the county, with no negative impact to the neighboring parcels. Solar is already held to a much higher standard than other uses, and development concerns can be addressed with conditions approved by the board, and additional studies can be completed if requested. Off script again, if we can move forward with this project, we will continue to work with staff, adhere to any conditions that would come up, and then by allowing us to move forward with the project, there's going to be additional studies that might therefore also create other conditions that we'd be fine with. we wouldn't have a choice, right? A 12-month delay, and this is very important here, a 12-month delay materially harms the project by preventing it from entering in the Dominion Shared Solar Program, which is a program that benefits low and moderate income residents. That program is anticipated to be fully allocated and no longer available by the end of this year. We will most likely miss the boat on this one. And I think this is a really solid project, and that would be unfortunate both for James City County and Sun Tribe as well. So I think that that's something that we would like for you guys to consider, especially since we've already kind of been in the process for a little bit. And then lastly, Sun Tribe has built its reputation developing responsible projects in counties all across Virginia. Allow us to show you that this is a very good project and will benefit the county by allowing us to move forward through Planning Commission, Board of Supervisors, and continue to work with staff. You will hear from the landowner we have partnered with about how important this project is to their family and the conservation and legacy planning they have for this parcel, which they plan to retain ownership of during and after the useful life of the project. Lastly, Sun Tribe has assisted several counties developing policy and ordinance addressing alternative energy facilities and is willing and looks forward to assisting James City County as you continually update your policy in the coming months. And then I'll just close with, I have had the opportunity to work with several counties in Central Virginia and Western Virginia on comprehensive plans and also solar ordinances. Some of them, it's the first time they'd really dealt with it, and I think that Sun Tribe can certainly say that they've been very happy with the work that we've done, and we'd like to continue to do that with you guys. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Josh Mays.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Joshua Mays of 135 Racefield Drive, Toano, Virginia. I'm here to speak out about the Hertzler agenda on the item tonight, SUP 20-0010, and to, in the strongest terms possible, urge you to finally vote this down once and for all. I was not supposed to be the one speaking here tonight. My mother was. She spoke out against this 23 years ago now, when this first came before this board, and Dr. McGlennon knows, or can probably remember how active the community was against it at that time, leading to a 5-0 vote down. She cannot be here. She's in the hospital tonight. However, that's not the important part. The important part is the fact that there is nothing in this plan that says that neighborhood will not be irrevocably harmed by allowing this to continue. There's no way to allow traffic. I can speak from personal experience about having fleets of logging trucks going down a single lane road at 5:30 in the morning, what that does to a school bus driving down the road, what that does to vehicles driving down the road in the middle of the night, because this has been in operation in hiding for my entire life living at that house. This has been something that I can personally remember driving past people that were pulled off into the dirt on the side of Barnes Road who had been driven off the road by these logging trucks. I have personally spoken with the first responders who have pulled people out of the road. I have been on the school buses that have had to pull by because logging trucks have gone through at high speed in the very early hours of the morning or late at night. And there is no way to mitigate the fact that Barnes Road is a single lane road that has no business with that many commercial trucks going through at all hours. There's also no way to mitigate the fact that as a residential neighborhood, that kind of noise is something that is instantly recognizable for, I legitimately want to say miles, because I can distinctly remember every year for years when milling was going on. I could tell you almost to the minute when things would start. I could tell you almost to the minute that At a certain point, milling would go down, and it'd be because you'd see trucks going out. I'm sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here a little bit, but this is not something that we want in a small neighborhood where there are a ton of children coming and going at all hours of the day. It is a small, single-family household neighborhood. However, aside from that, I do want to point out that we're not talking about somebody proposing installation of a new project here. We are talking about a company that 20-plus years ago already asked the county for permission to do exactly what they've done. They were denied, not by a 3-2 vote, not by a 4-1 vote, but by a unanimous 5-0 vote after many public hearings like this, and after hundreds of people spoke out against it. And then they did it anyway. If I were to have built a shed in my backyard without going through the planning commission, I would be required to tear it down before I go and got approval. It would never be in consideration that 20 years later, I can go back and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to apply for a permit to recognize that this is okay after the fact. We cannot allow or go through and say, hey, 25 years down the road almost at this point, you know what, we're going to let you continue to do what you've done, when you were told unanimously by this board not to do it. I strongly urge you, please do what the board 25 years ago did. Dr. McGlennon, what you are the only one who is still here who remembers that, the contentiousness of that, and I urge you to vote this down again unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jay Everson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jay Everson, 6923 Chancery Lane. I will also want to speak on two things. One is the Hertzler. I am astonished that this is even before us. When it's voted down 5-0 20 years ago, they do this. It's just, are we going to say it's okay if we don't get a special use permit that we can go out and just do it anyway? It's just not right. It's not law-abiding, in my view. I thought we were a nation of laws, or in this case, a nation of special use permits and ordinances. Second point, wanted to talk about your resolution on the solar farms, solar facilities. The first one that came out, and I read it, and I was glad to see the 1-year moratorium. I did talk to Ms. Sadler to see, because I know on some of these you might have a revised ordinance, a resolution, I should say, so I had called her to see if there had been any revisions, and I got the revised one here. And I'm very pleased that you guys are taking the Natural and Cultural Resource Committee report seriously, because unlike Richmond and Washington, our diverse group of people on that, we somehow or other, from the butterfly lady to myself, David, come to a compromise and come forward with solid suggestions that this needed to have an ordinance. Now, the gentleman that just spoke on this, I take his point. However, we've approved some of these, and all you have to do is go down Farmville Lane to get a handle on what we approved without probably realizing it, what has happened to that road. I like the idea about having this. I don't have a problem with the consultant. I do think, though, however, that the consultant needs to have, you need to have the same thing that they did with the Cultural Natural Resource Committee, because we had different people, like people from this company here who know something about it, regular citizens, because you're talking anywhere from Greenmount to Forge Road, and everything in between could be impacted by this. And it seems to me that the time period for March is good. I'm a little concerned about the shortness of the time, because if you are looking for a draft policy on September 12th, and then in October you'll start considering stuff, you'd have to advertise this thing in August. for that policy to go in, to go into effect so people could public comment on it. And that means that you've got like 3 months to do all this. And it seems to me this is a pretty big deal when you see what happens in neighborhoods, stuff that you can't even foresee. I mean, never occurred to me that Farmville Lane would look like this. For some reason, I had in my mind this is going to be underground. Other folks I thought was going to go out the back. I mean, we need to be clear on this. It needs to be definitive. And same stuff. And by the way, just as a offhand, I mentioned topsoil. And Mr. McQuinnan had mentioned that he hadn't heard the topsoil thing. I had never thought of topsoil in a million years in terms of stormwater, in terms of the last project, if I hadn't been on this committee. You know, I used to be a fried chicken guy, and I can assure you that fried chicken people, we don't pay much attention to dirt. But I appreciate your time, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Vernon Getty?
Chairman, members of the board, I'm Vernon Getty of 1177 Jamestown Road. It's my pleasure to be here tonight on behalf of the Hertzlers, Hertzler Clearing and Grading. Since we were before you last, the Hertzlers, working with Land Tech, who was working with your SRP staff, has gone out on the site and produced the master plan I think you were looking for, that shows in detail where each of the activities will be located, shows the areas. You can see them in hatching here, where RPA restoration needs to take place, and shows the other activities. Just to refresh your memory, this is the newest aerial photo of the site. Interstate 64 here, obviously the wide right-of-way and all the traffic on that, and then about 30 over here. Here's the stretch of road that's the vast majority of traffic goes on. And you'll recall the Hertzler, it's a small business. To set the record, they own 1 logging truck. They own 3 dump trucks. There are no convoys of their vehicles going down this road. There are other traffic. It's a cut-through for trucks heading to West Point, but it can't be attributed to the Hertzlers. But since your last meeting, I can get my fingers working. Restoration work on the site. This is one of the areas to be restored. The work has been completed, and you see a picture of it here. The material's been removed. The area's been stabilized. You'll see where that is on the site. Second area is here, larger amount of material to remove. This was as of last Thursday. You'll see a large amount of the material has been removed, and they're continuing. I suspect more is gone by now. Mike Wilson was out on the site last Thursday and took a look and confirmed that the one area is complete, and this one is well on its way. The Hertzlers have also ordered the landscaping you'll see mentioned in your staff report to complete the remediation. And shows where this is on the site. So to wrap up, this is a environmentally responsible use. This business is a good business. It's a great way to dispose of clearing waste. It's also a good business in rural lands where I think you're looking for businesses that can make an economic impact in rural lands. It's compatible with the surrounding zoning and development. It's consistent with the 2045 comprehensive plan. Your staff is recommending approval. As I showed you and mentioned, the remediation work is already well underway. You had wanted specific conditions with specific timeframes for work to be done and plans to be submitted. Those are included in the SUP conditions now, and there is a provision for annual inspections. So I think with these conditions, it will ensure there are no adverse impacts from this use, It will bring the site into compliance with the ordinances, and perhaps most importantly, will ensure it remains in compliance with those ordinances. The Hertzlers have already paid all their taxes, their business taxes, their business personal property taxes. It's a positive fiscal impact for the county, and I think it's in the best interest of the county not to shut down this small family-owned business. Better to bring it into compliance with county requirements with the assurances that it will remain in compliance, let it continue to generate tax revenue, employ folks, and responsibly dispose of clearing waste. So with that, we'd be glad to answer any questions now or later during your discussion. We'd, of course, be happy to answer questions there. Thank you.
If you'll stay up there for a minute. Normally during the public comment, we don't have a back and forth, but I have a member that would like to ask a few questions
Sure,
while we're.
absolutely.
I mean, should I wait until it's consideration on our agenda?
No, we won't. We'll just discuss
Okay.
it and that's it.
So, you said there's one logging truck.
Right.
Are there other logging trucks that come to the business? Okay, so just the one logging. So as you might imagine, we're under a little bit of pressure because this is a business that's been operating
Right.
illegally for all these years. Why should we, what kind of message are we sending if we say, okay, well, you've done this and now you're asking us to approve it? I mean, I understand your reasoning, but that makes it it's a very tough sell to businesses who have operated legally and done everything that they've been asked to do all these years. So I'd just give you a chance to.
I think we discussed at length, the Hertzlers, rightly or wrongly, felt like after that initial turn down, there was some discussion about the scope of that project, what was approved, what was not approved, and what they were permitted to do. It's nothing they've tried to hide over the years. I mean, they've paid their taxes, gotten their business license. They have a website. I mean, anybody, every 2 years, the county takes aerial photos so you can see the progression of things. So I think now we're here, and I think the question really is it better for the county to make a statement as you described, or you've got people who are now here bringing the site into compliance with conditions and that will ensure it stays in compliance. Are you better off shutting the business down or allowing it to come into compliance, continue to operate in compliance, and do the good work it does?
Okay. Thank you. Are we going to have an opportunity to ask staff a question at the time, or we just have to do the board consideration and with? We can ask. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Brian.
Thank you. All right. Ms. Hunter. And I couldn't see if didn't want to pronounce it wrong.
I'm Patricia Hunter.
Patricia.
Thank you for letting me come tonight and speak. I'll just start off. My mother was raised in Toanna, and I still have a strong family attachment to the area. Another branch of my family, the Coles, still holds several large agricultural parcels here as well. The family lore holds that the land was a grant from the King of England. This is a long way of saying that we have a lot of roots here. I'm speaking about the solar project on Richmond Road. I'm here today as a representative of the Martin branch of my family who owns property on Route 60 or Richmond Road. I am the primary landowner for the Richmond Road solar project, which engaged with county staff last year and recently submitted the special use of application to James City County. We are third and fourth generation owners and have a very vested interest in the future of James City County. Through the years, we've been approached many times and encouraged to sell our property for various development projects. Housing developments, cell phone towers, entities who offered no plans, people and organizations who just wanted the land. When we were approached by Sun Tribe Development over 2 years ago about utilizing our property, we did our due diligence and decided that this approach would be a prudent decision. Sun Tribe is a Virginia-based company. They wish to preserve the integrity of the rural land. This project would provide an income stream for my family, which would allow us to continue to financially support the land. Development of a solar facility will help to provide clean, renewable fuel, which we need as a society. We felt they shared our family values of being a good neighbor. It is a win for the county, my family, and most importantly, consumers of energy, which is every single person in this room. It seemed a good fit. As a company, Sun Tribe Development is tasked with many things, environmental impact and stewardship of the land being of utmost importance to me. I completely respect the wishes of the community to preserve rural land. However, the needs and wishes of landowners should also be respected. Growth and change are not easy. A solar farm would be a passive neighbor, hidden from view once construction is complete, and it would also be a quiet neighbor. Careful and methodical consideration, the Martin family descendants feel that this project meets all needs. Please consider this project based on its own merits. We have worked diligently for the past 2 years and, as mentioned, have recently filed a special use application to James City County. As property owners, we would like to exercise our right to explore land use approvals without delay, as others have done in the county for decades. Thank you for your time. Do y'all have any questions for me or him? We good?
Thank you. Brian Oyer?
Brian Oyer, 9025 Barnes Road. Almost 40 years in Stonehouse and ungracefully shoved into Powhatan last year.
Welcome.
Couple quick things. The solar farms. People are against the solar farms. I'm not real sure why. Solar farm hasn't caused the need for a new school. Doesn't increase traffic after construction. Understand people on this land have had it for their family for many, many years, like what went on with the Hazelwoods. They can't keep it because they can't afford to keep it rural. So it has to be something at some point, and it's a lot better than a bunch of houses that look like at Whitehall. Number two, how can York County build a fire station for $3.6 million? I know this county can't do it because it's going to have to be some grandiose object like always gets built. Okay. CIP, I know the budget's coming up. I hope you're watching what other counties are doing. They're giving rebates, they're lowering property taxes. Even York County's doing it. Hertzler clearing and grading. I was in this room 20 some odd years ago, and I know Mr. McClendon was the only other one who was in there. And I spoke against it then, and I'm gonna speak against it again. I sent an email in December, and nobody responded to my email except my ex-supervisor responded. And I gave you reasons why it should have been excluded then and now. There was a big issue initially. It was about traffic. Well, I've lived on Barnes Road for 40 years. Let me tell you how the traffic has changed in the last 20. A lot. They may only have one tractor trailer, but he's not afraid of the accelerator when he comes through there with a dump trailer load of logs. And I have seen him, he doesn't slow down when he meets anybody else. And I was gonna call Hertzler one time and ask him, but I figured if they didn't care about the SUP, they probably don't care about what's going on with their trucks. So that's one reason they don't need to be. It does not need to be voted. It should have never made it to tonight. It should have been voted down in December, okay? Other issues have gone on Barnes Road. Several years ago, for many, many years, Barnes Road, it came out to the intersection. There was a stop sign in the middle and a little small dirt island, which delineated the left lanes and the right lanes. And when you came off of Old Stage Road, turning left onto Barnes Road, you literally had to come to a stop to make a left turn. Several years ago, and I don't know who, but somebody's trucks were turning left onto Barnes Road and the shoulders were getting torn all to pieces. VDOT came in and put a bunch of number 3 stone down. Then mysteriously, the stop sign disappeared from that intersection and the little island got paved in. Well, it wasn't too long after that, 2 people were killed at that intersection, and part of it was because of what happened at that intersection. Somebody was making a left off of Old Stage onto Barnes, and they were beating the traffic coming from West Point. 2 young people on a motorcycle ran into the side of a van that cut that corner. And I've had people do that exact same thing now that that intersection is so wide. So it's become an extremely dangerous intersection based off of what went on when that stop sign was removed, the island was filled in, there's no delineation, it's just a big wide open area. So it's a problem. And I don't know how many of you have driven Barnes Road. When you turn off of 30, Old Stage Road, and you're heading in off the left or the right, whichever, when you get to Hertzler's entrance, it's almost a blind turn when you're heading away from 30. You have very little bit of field of vision, and when one of those trucks pull out, they're not going to pull out of there very fast. And there may have not have been an accident that nobody's talked about, but I can assure you, I'm sure there's been plenty close calls due to it, okay? So that's another issue, is where that intersection is coming out of there. So that's another reason that this needs to be shot down. And as far as compliance, I was sitting back here laughing listening about compliance. They haven't complied for 20-some years. You have DEQ, you have the Army Corps, they have the teeth. So don't make the mistake and approve this, because if you do, you're setting a terrible precedent. And if I had had SUP for an Airbnb denied the last few years, I'd run out and book it tomorrow, because nothing's going to happen.
Thank you. Stephen Bakinski? Welcome.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. For the record, my name is Stephen Zabinski, and I live at 5133 Ginger Court. And I originally wanted to talk about the 911 dispatch center tonight, but hearing the discussion tonight, I remember hearing about this issue about the company that had been denied a special use permit 20 years ago and went ahead and did it anyway. And for the last 20 years ago, they thumbed their nose at the board and said, we're doing it anyway. And for 20 years, they've been out of compliance, and they have been very negatively impacting their neighbors along that road for a very long time. And now, after the fact, they want to come to you and say, well, you know, we've been there for so long, why are you going to throw us away? Oh, don't worry, we will comply with all of the ordinances now that you've caught us. This does not seem like a business that it would be a good idea to trust. But that's not what I was originally here to talk about. I've recently found out that we're considering moving our 911 dispatch center and consolidating it with the York County Dispatch Center. And the reason we're looking at consolidating is primarily due to staffing concerns. And while I understand that these are very real and very serious concerns, you want your 911 dispatchers to be fresh and alert, and with low staffing levels, you lead to employee burnout, and there are a whole lot of other issues that could stem from that. But there are a lot of very good reasons to have a 911 dispatch center here in James City County. The James City County and York County 911 dispatch centers act as a backup for each other, a local backup where if something happens at one facility, the 911 dispatchers can go to the other facility and offer uninterrupted operations. This turned out to be a very wise plan because something recently happened with the James City County 911 dispatch center, and because of the close proximity of the York County, they've been operating out of there until our facility is back in operation. Now, what would happen now if something happened at the York County Dispatch Center? Where would their backup be? it wouldn't be as close and it would be far more of an impact. The staffing concerns. I'm not here today to tell you, here's the problem, figure out a way to fix it. I'm here to also offer a potential solution. If we can hold on for another year with this dispatch center, do a concerted effort to find and recruit more people. There are a lot of community organizations who are very active within the local area who meet for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And a lot of them are primarily retirees because during breakfast, lunch, and dinner, most working people are either at work or close to their office or getting their family settled after work. While these retirees may not be the target audience you're looking for to recruit 911 dispatchers from, they are tied in with their communities and they are very active within their communities. And if you can send personnel from your offices and let them know, hey, we have a serious concern, we have a serious shortage of staffing, here are the qualifications, here's what we're looking for pay. I know many of these organizations would welcome somebody coming and say, hey, can we have 5 minutes for this very serious community concern because we want to keep our 911 dispatch center. I know they would welcome you with open arms. To find these organizations, you can look to the local Democrat and Republican the local Democrat and Republican committees. They are well networked within their communities. They can put you in touch with them. And please start talking to these people, because the people at these social organizations, they can talk to their friends, their neighbors, and their families, and they can find quality candidates for you for pennies on the dollar rather than having to go through a recruiting site or some other kind of active recruiting effort that you would have to pay for. So please do what we can to keep this very important resource here within our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Ann Smith? Oh, yes, Anne Marie, I'm sorry. I switched it on you. Thank you.
Okay. Hey, good evening. I just want to preface with, I'm a little bit on fire with my emotions today, so if these words are a bit direct, forgive me. But if the same people who have put forth this budget have been considering moving our 911 dispatch center out of our county, then why am I not surprised? This is not supported by myself or any resident that I've spoken with. We have shot this down time and time again, and still no one is listening. Once this is defeated again, I would not expect this to be revisited, or someone employed here needs to be, someone's employment needs to be revisited for not serving the will of the people who live here and pay those salaries. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's all our speaker cards. All right, I'll go ahead and close that public comment session. And consent calendar, we don't have anything on there, so I would ask that on the public hearing that we move number 5 up to number 1 in order to do the budget hearing. Can I have a motion that we?
Sure, I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Roll call, sir, please.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Mr. McGlennon?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Hiffle?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, that moves that forward. So our first public hearing will be our budget hearing. Sharon. Welcome.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. Over the past several months, we've held a number of meetings to discuss various budget-related matters, including personnel, school funding, as well as capital projects. The purpose of this evening's public hearing is to invite public comment on the proposed budget. But before we open the public hearing, I would like to take a moment just to give a brief overview of some of the more significant components of the proposed budget. Fiscal year 2024 is the second year of the county's 2-year budget. The budget was built from the plan that was developed this time last year, and it's been adjusted to address for current demands. The budget serves as the county's means of aligning and allocating funding to our 7 strategic goals. The total proposed budget is $330.2 million, and that includes not just the operating fund, but the county's capital fund and all of our other funds as well. The year-over-year increase is $98.8 million, or 42%, which is significant. The majority of that, however, does relate to a few significant capital projects. Including in that total is the county's operating budget, also known as its general fund, and that year-over-year increase is $14 million. That total does not include about $39 million of additional requests that have not been funded in order to balance the budget. This budget includes no new positions, but it does include a wage increase and some other changes to existing positions. This chart presents the 2023 adopted budget, which of course is our current year. It also includes the 24 plan that was developed last year, as well as a column with the 2024 proposed amounts. The final column provides the difference between this year's adopted budget and next year's proposed amounts. The main changes we've already outlined, and that is the general fund at $14 million and the capital projects fund at $79.4 million. The drivers of the proposed $14 million increase in general fund revenue primarily relates to three categories. The first one is in our general property taxes. That is the county's main funding source for ongoing operations. It includes real estate taxes as well as personal property taxes, and it comprises about 70% of our total revenue. There are no changes in the proposed tax rates themselves, and because 2024 is a non-reassessment year, the increase in this category is due to new development and anticipated growth. The increase in our other local taxes is to adjust for current trends. This is where we account for our excise taxes, sales, meals, and lodging taxes. And of course, during the pandemic, this is where we saw the most significant decline in our revenues. And we have been continuing to see these revenues recover as we've gotten further away from the height of the pandemic. As for charges for services, the only changes in the fees that are proposed are modest increases to our recreation center fees and our child care programs, which are driven by the increases that we've seen in wages and just other program costs. We're also proposing to adjust the fees for our medic transport recovery program, and that's to align with the reimbursement rates that we receive from Medicare. The majority of the revenue from this line item comes from insurance carriers and the federal government through the Medicare program. As for operating expenditures, the largest portion of our budget continues to be education in the form of our contribution to the school division, both for operations and in paying the debt on their capital projects. The total of those two items is about $106 million, which comprises almost half of our budget at 46%. An increase of $4 million in the county's contribution to the school division has been included, with up to an additional $2 million to be determined once the General Assembly adopts its budget and the amount of state funding is known. That $2 million is included in the non-departmental line, which is the last line item before the total on this slide. The second largest expenditure is public safety. They comprise about $35 million of our budget, or 15%. So between education and public safety together, that's about 61% of our budget. So the remaining 39% goes to cover all of the other county's departments, as well as all of the county's needs, as well as our obligations on debt service. Regarding the next steps in the budget process, again, we've held several meetings to date. We began this process in January with our pre-budget hearing. The county administrator released his proposed budget at the end of March, and we've had a community meeting, which took place last week, so we could dive into the details of the budget. We do have 2 more additional meetings on the budget. The first opportunity is on April 25th at a business meeting at 1 p.m. We have a regular meeting scheduled on May the 9th at 5 p.m. That is the meeting that the board is scheduled to adopt the budget. Both of those meetings will take place in this very room at the James City County Government Complex. And again, I just wanted to mention various resources that are available in addition to the budget, which includes both summary information as well as detailed information. We also include our audited financial statements, and we include our current year checkbook. So the information that is out there presents the future with the budget, the past with the audit, and the current year with our checkbook. That concludes my remarks. Mr. Chair, if you would like to open the public hearing.
Any questions before I open the public hearing for staff? Okay, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. Donnie McDaniel? Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Donnie McDaniel, Executive Director of Community of Faith Mission. Most of you know me. I want to thank you so much for giving me your attention this evening. To begin, on behalf of Community of Faith Mission, I'd like to express our appreciation for the support that you have shown us over the 11 seasons in helping to cover costs such as inspections for the host sites, which is a requirement. It's fire and safety. And also you help reimburse us for all the bus tickets for our guests. So we do want to thank you so much for that. COFM, throughout the years, we have added staff in the evening to ensure the integrity of our program. Each year, there's always challenges that COFM has met. And in year 10, there showed an increase in the mental illness of our guests coming in, the level of mental illness. COFM completed their 11th season on February the 26th of this year. The season proved to be an additionally challenging with the severity of mental illness among our guests. Unexpectedly and outside of our planned budget, because we know we're working on a 2-year budget, so we had put in a funds request. So unexpectedly and outside of our planned budget, the severity of mental illness reached a point to where it was necessary to hire off-duty officers for the safety of our guests, staff, and volunteers. Many of these officers have CIT training, which is Crisis Intervention Team training, so that they can help de-escalate situations. We will need to continue this arrangement for season 12 and beyond. Now, 75% of our host sites, if you're familiar, we go from church to church to church, so 75% of those host sites are located within James City County. So the majority of officers will be James City County off-duty police officers. COFM, we're doing our part to try to help address the mental illness. We're going to be going to a CIT training ourselves, and also all of our staff will be required to have mental health first aid training. So that's the part that we're doing. But as you know, we're a nonprofit, so we depend on donations. We don't create, we don't make money. So what I am asking is I'm asking you to reconsider the amount. We originally get about $1,200 to cover the inspections. And we're asking that you would, that's the amount you allotted. And we're asking that our request for around $18,000 to be reconsidered. I know that this is slim, and I was told that in order to ask, I had to come to this hearing, so that's what I'm doing. If there's another avenue I was supposed to do, I ask for your forgiveness. This is where I was directed. But I do ask that you consider, without having COFM, as you know, we're here for 5 months of the year, the financial burden would be much greater than that on James City County itself. So it's actually a reduced cost. Some people would say, well, if they're James City County officers, why aren't they just volunteering? Well, that would be great, but you're asking them to come 3 hours a night, 7 nights a week, 126 nights. That's a bit much to ask for people to volunteer. So we respect that, but we're just asking you to please reconsider when you're going over that. Thank you so much for your time, and I will give you guys an update, I promise.
Thank you.
Good.
So 3 hours a night. Explain that. What time do they get there?
Thank you for your question. So this year, we were required to do a 4-hour minimum. That was for James City County, York County, and City of Williamsburg. Well, not York County, I'm sorry, City of Williamsburg. And so we were able to negotiate that down to the 3 hours. The reason we choose 3 hours is because, one, it's financially, we can't afford anything more than that. But the busiest times or the most times that we will have issues is during what we call check-in, and our shelter operates from 6:30 p.m. till 7 a.m. So the times we seem to have the most challenges is between about 5:36 to about 9. At 10 o'clock, it's lights out, and so there might be some time then. Bedding and when they can start going to bed is at 8:15, and there's sometimes when you have a mental illness for, a person maybe that's of level-headedness, they may think, so what, I'm just going to get a mat and lay down. But for someone with mental illness, that is a huge thing for them. So there can be a lot of situations. The police, because they had the CIT training, there were at least 10, would you say at least 10 instances, because we didn't start this till mid-season when it just got so severe, that they de-escalated it. And it was so quick and so efficient, whereas when before we didn't have anyone, we would have it to where you would have to call and pray to God that you could keep everything at peace until the police got there. And then by then it's so escalated.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, our next speaker, Jay Everson.
Again, Mr. Chairman, Jay Everson, 6923 Chancery Lane. I wanted to compliment James City County for keeping their health insurance to 3%. That is incredible, considering the school system got theirs from 15 down to 9. The other thing is, I know that you've got in your CIP, Jamestown High, cafeteria expansion. I hate to spend money on something that we don't need, that is overcrowding is by choice because of the lack of redistricting. I would encourage you once again to take it out, and thank you for getting the Bright Beginnings rocking and rolling. I had brown hair when this started. Thank you.
No, you didn't.
Anne Marie Smith. Got it.
Okay, hi again. I don't agree with the proposed budget. As a citizen of the county, I just simply cannot support 42% increase in spending. And nothing, seriously, nothing ever goes down in cost. So we're setting a precedent that just cannot be undone. And the word preposterous seems to come to mind. I don't agree with funding the preschool. I know the money's already been set aside. I don't agree with that. It's basically a glorified daycare. And studies have shown that actually there is no increased learning over time with preschools. We're funding a $95 million plus municipal facility that frankly is going to probably be $100 million before it's done. It's based on a study that says JCC will grow by 40%, and I really cannot simply understand what's driving that. Where's the Research Triangle Park? What college is coming here? I just can't see it. It's just not been proven to the citizens. I guess that's how I could say. I think there needs to be far more justification before that becomes something solid to move forward with. There's a lot of waste in our current buildings. Lobbies are largely unused. Workspaces are filled with storage boxes and old furniture. And I'm not saying the buildings don't need replacement, so don't get me wrong there. But I just don't know where we go from where we're at in this beautiful room right here to a $95 million facility. So I'll give you a case in point. Let's look at the police station on Opportunity Way. The building's empty. I mean, literally no one's there. I mean, I'm exaggerating a bit, but has anybody been there lately? I mean, the police are not there. I feel duped into thinking that this building would be useful and that the spending would be worth it. And was this building approved with the false growth data as well? Funds unwisely spent on a building that largely sits vacant and underutilized. And on this topic, if we locate, and I'm on a rant on this municipal building, and I'm sorry, but it's really been a bee in my bonnet lately. You know, we were presented as citizens with, we're going to develop Opportunity Way, we're going to use that area, it's central to the community. Okay, that was a pretty good idea. You got a lot of planning. Warhill High School was placed over there, and now all of a sudden it's located somewhere else. And how are we justifying that after being sold the bill of goods on Opportunity Way? There's a lot of bait and switch that just seems to be going on. So I think there's a lot of work there to convince us of that. I cannot support it. I cannot support this budget. I encourage you not to support this budget. Again, this is a precedent we cannot undo. And last, I am all for raises. I really am. I think our teachers need raises. I think our employees need raises. I think we need the best that the area can offer. But I am convinced that we can cut the fat. I just don't think we need to keep adding and adding and adding. You wouldn't do that in your household. You wouldn't do that in your business. So I think we can find the funds somewhere else by cutting the fat. And I thank you for listening. I appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thank you. All right, any other speaker cards? No, sir. Okay, I'll go ahead and close that public hearing, and there'll be no action tonight on this issue. The budget is scheduled for adoption at the May 9th, 2023 meeting. So we'll move on to the next, and I want us, our PC chair, Mr. Polster's here. Thank you, sir, for coming and spending time with us tonight and helping us through these issues. And next on our agenda is AFD-22-0018 278 Ivy Hill Road, Mill Creek AFD addition. John, welcome, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Mr. Chris Taylor has applied to enroll approximately 256.85 acres of land located at 278 Ivy Hill Road into the Mill Creek AFD. The parcel is zoned A1 General Agricultural and designated rural lands on a 2045 comprehensive plan. The parcel is located within 1 mile of the core of the Mill Creek AFD and is directly adjacent to other parcels in the district. The property is currently undeveloped and wooded, and the applicant indicates that it is used for private recreational activities. The applicant indicated the property was last timbered 15 years ago and would likely be timbered in the future after the timber stand has matured. The AFD Advisory Committee recommended approval of the application by a vote of 7-0 at its January 19th, 2023 meeting, and the Planning Commission recommended approval by a vote of 6-0 at its March 1st, 2023 meeting. Staff finds that the proposed addition meets state and local requirements for inclusion in AFD and recommends that the Board of Supervisors approve the addition subject to the proposed conditions. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have for staff. Thank you.
Questions for staff? Good job. Thank you. Mr. Polster.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the Planning Commission had no questions for staff. There were no speakers of the public hearing, and there was no discussion between commissioners on this issue. The Planning Commission voted 6-0 in favor of recommending approval to the board, and I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions? Good job.
Thank you,
sir. All right. We'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. And would the applicant wish to speak? No? Okay. Any speaker cards? No. We'll close the public hearing, and I'll look to the board for discussion or action item.
Motion to approve?
Motion for approval. Mr. Stevens, you call the roll, please, sir.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Ipple?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, next is LU-20-0002 Eastern State Parcel C and UL-20-003 Eastern State Mixed Use Committee Land Use Designation Changes. Ms. Cook, how you doing?
Thank you. Good evening, members of the board.
Evening.
In the summer and fall of 2021, the board considered the 2045 comprehensive plan and adopted the plan in October. As part of its consideration of the plan, the board voted to postpone the 2 Eastern State Land Use Designation Change applications. The board again voted to postpone the applications on April 12, 2022. Since this most recent postponement, no formal applications have been received for the property encompassed by these 2 applications. Since no rezoning applications have been received to date, staff recommends postponing these applications for 12 months or until such time as rezoning applications for the properties involved have been submitted. Should the board wish to approve a land use designation change to mixed use for one or both applications at this time, staff recommends the board consider including amended land use designation description language in the 2045 comprehensive plan. To reflect guidance the board provided on April 26, 2022, one of the applications has been renamed to reference Parcel C instead of Newtown, and the language provided in the staff memo was updated to consolidate all recommendations for the Eastern State property under the Eastern State Mixed Use Area Designation description. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have at this time. Thank you.
Questions? No? Okay. There's no PC report on this, so I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. And would the applicant like to speak? Okay. Any other public speakers? No public. Close public hearing on that, and I'll look to the board for direction and decision.
Mr. Chairman, I believe staff has indicated that
although they don't have an application right now, that the two applications are pending in fairly short order within the next couple, 2-3 months maybe. So I would make a recommendation that we, again, defer for 12 months or until such time as an application is received and being processed, and then we would consider the land use change concurrent with the application for rezoning.
Like a postponement? Yes, sir. All right, we have a motion on the floor.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, next, proposal fiscal year 2024-2029 secondary 6-year plan. Tom, welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Each year, the Virginia Department of Transportation works with the James City County Board of Supervisors to develop a list of projects for the updated secondary 6-year plan. Through the SSYP, the county receives yearly state and federal allocations to fund proposed secondary improvements. Staff recommends the following priorities for the fiscal year 2024 through 2029 secondary 6-year plan. The first priority is Croker Road. The project will widen the section of roadway between Richmond Road and the James City County Library from 2 lanes to 4. Staff recommends keeping this project as the first priority on the SSYP to ensure that the project remains fully funded. Staff recommends the second and third priorities to be the 2 intersection improvements. VDOT placed temporary bollards at the intersections of Old Stage Road and Route 30 and Centerville Road and Route 5. By including these 2 projects as a priority, VDOT is able to keep these 2 intersection improvements fully funded as the project moves through the engineering phase. The fourth and fifth priorities proposed for the SSYP are the second and third phases of the Long Hill Road widening quick hitter items. In addition to those items above, VDOT utilizes a special funding mechanism that provides annual allocations to localities for special projects such as bridge projects. This year's priority project is the Hicks Island Road Bridge. Staff recommends adoption of the attached resolution, which endorses the secondary road priority list as set forth in this memo for the fiscal years 2024 through 2029 secondary 6-year plan. I'll be happy to answer any questions at this time. Thank you.
Questions?
Ms. Flanagan, could you talk a little bit about the Long Hill Road quick hit project, and in particular whether any of it involves widening between District Park and Centerville Road, and then secondly, what portions of the road are really targeted for those quick hits that you talked about?
So you may recall during the corridor study, there were kind of some list of short-term improvements. This does not include widening of any of the portions. Basically what the quick hitters in summary is restriping of the advanced stop bars, the intersection ahead signage, so warning drivers that there's an intersection coming up. The T intersection signage is another common one that we're seeing on the quick hitter list. And then relocation of stop signs for better sight distances. So it's more of those quick improvements rather than a full-on roadway widening.
Thank you very much. That answers my question.
Any other questions?
If I may, real quick, on that same area, there's been there have been citizens who have complained for years about that catty-wonky intersection at the Whisk and Long Hill Gate, where people are trying to figure out how to turn. Is any of that in this plan to maybe straighten that out at all?
Not during this one, because that would involve a much larger roadway improvement.
Okay.
There may be some better striping involved in it, but it won't include actually
I don't think
realigning.
striping is going to help.
Yeah.
But keep that on the back burner because I still get complaints about that little area right there. Thank you.
I was going to ask one other question, and that is that when we do get to the point where they start doing some of these intersection improvements like that or widening, I believe there's probably a need, and the board would hopefully support it, to do the portion that runs from Old Town up to about the entrance to
District Park.
The park, yes. Especially some of the problems that they have around the high school. Beyond the park, I really don't see any real need for expansion or widening beyond that part out. So I guess when it comes time, we would then wrestle with putting maybe the Phase 2 widening for a certain part of it into the plan, but we haven't, until we do that, it's just not there, right? Okay, good.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
I'm not saying a word, just if there's any way this actually goes in, I'll be doing a jig.
And there's no PC reports, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing, and no need for applicant. Public speaker cards? None? Go ahead and close public hearing, and look for the board for direction.
I'll move the motion.
All right, we have a motion.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, next, SUP-23-0001, 2886 Lake Powell Road, rental rooms. Terry, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, members of the board. Ms. Emily Martell has applied for a special use permit to allow for the rental of up to 3 rooms of a 4-bedroom, single-family home at 2886 Lake Powell Road. The property is zoned R2, general residential, and is designated low-density residential on the comprehensive plan land use map, and is located inside the primary service area. The property is served by public water and sewer. If granted, this SUP would allow for short-term rentals throughout the year. No changes to the footprint of the home are proposed. Staff finds some favorable factors for this application, such as the presence of adequate off-street parking and that the owner will live on site. Staff finds the proposed use will not negatively impact levels of service for roads and other public services. Staff finds the proposal to be incompatible with surrounding development and not consistent with the recommendations for short-term rentals in the 2045 Comprehensive Plan. Staff therefore does not recommend approval of this application. However, should the board approve this application, staff has recommended conditions that were included in the packet. At its March 1st meeting, the Planning Commission recommended approval by a vote of 6-0. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, and the applicant is also available. Thank you.
Questions? Mr. Polster, welcome again.
Board. There was some clarification from the staff statement on the inconsistency with the 2045 comp plan, and that one factor that was unfavorable was that the parcel was not located in the rural lands. However, it was consistent with the other 3 factors that you all approved. It was on a major road located on the edge of an existing subdivision. The owner lives on the property. There was one speaker, which was a next-door neighbor, who spoke in favor of the application. The Planning Commission, based on that, voted 6-0 for recommending approval to the board, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
You said the neighbor spoke in favor of?
In favor of it.
Okay, thank you.
Which was nice to hear.
Yeah. All right, thank you, sir. All right, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing, and the applicant, Emily Martell.
Good evening. I am Emily Martell. I live at 2886 Lake Powell Road, which is what the SUP is for. I live there with my husband and my 3 children. So if any of you guys had the opportunity to drive down and see the proposed home, you would be greeted by my 9-year-old racing your car down the lane or my 2 little ones waving on the deck. Our home is a Cape-style home, and the top of the home is what is the apartment that we would be renting out. We choose to rent on the Airbnb platform. It's the only place that we list our home, and we choose that for several reasons, but one of them being the fact that the guests review us and we get to review the guests, and it kind of holds us both accountable to make sure that they are respectful and we are keeping up positive standards, and that's a peace of mind for us to know who is coming into our home that way. Our home has, like mentioned adequate parking. If you're looking at a picture of our home, to the right of it, there's steps that would go up to the apartment, and there's parking for the people who would be staying with us over there. So often, like, we wouldn't even, they can come and go without us even greeting them, but we always hear footprints around in the ceiling. Throughout this very long SUP process, and I'm happy to finally be at this phase, my husband and I took the opportunity to go and speak with our neighbors, and throughout that process, many of them didn't know that there was an Airbnb there. Actually, all of them, with the exception of the neighbor who spoke, didn't know that there was an Airbnb in our home, which felt good because we're not disturbing our community, which we love. And we were really blessed to be supported by all of our neighbors, as I'm sure you guys can see with the letters that we're supporting by them. So every single person that we spoke to supported us, which also felt really, really nice to know that they're respecting us and we're respecting them in the community that we chose to raise our kids in. I have done some research, and on newsairbnb.com, $15 million worth of sales tax revenue was put back into the Commonwealth of Virginia with Airbnb alone. That's not VRBO or any of the other hosting, that's just Airbnb. And I am proud to be a part of that and can't wait to see the 2022 numbers. And we are willing to comply with all conditions that are proposed, including the new 3-year check-in that is required. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Questions? No? Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
I guess I do have one question. So I guess you were operating an Airbnb without your special use permit.
It was, yeah.
And then was that because you didn't realize that one was needed, or?
So this special use permit is kind of like following a moving target. Everything feels like it's constantly changing. When I started, it looked like as long as I was living in the home, that was okay. I got a cease and desist order back in December and haven't been operating. We had to switch it to 30-day rental. We've been lucky enough to get that, but that's an income for my family. You know, I stay home with my kids. So once realizing that that's what we have to do, I am complying and following and trying to do it the right way.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All right, our next speaker is Lisa Waltrip.
Hello, Mr. Chairman and other board members. I am the neighbor who spoke positive about Emily and Aaron's Airbnb. I live with my parents at 2868 Lake Powell Road and take care of them full time. And I can see their home from my parents' home. I have numerous times come into contact with a lot of the people that visit their home. There's never been any kind of noise or any misconduct or any wild parties or anything like that. I can't say that about some of my family members that live next door to me. But the biggest reason I really like the Airbnb, and I feel like y'all will probably pass it for Emily, is she's a single mom. And you know, in today's society, that's the downfall, I think, of a lot of families, is that both parents are having to work. And she has 3 little children, couple wild ones, I can say, because I've adopted them as my own grandchildren. So, but they are cute as a button. But if they were having to send them to daycare at their young age, you know, it's just really hard. You get home from work, you get dinner, get them their bath, and they're in the bed. You don't have any time with your children. So to me, I'm hoping that they're passed, because then Emily can continue to stay home with her children. And I totally support the Airbnb, and I will be seeing you about Airbnb SUP in a couple months.
Thank you. All right, no other speaker cards, so I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and look to the board for direction or decision?
Mr.
on
Chairman, if I may, I think as people know, I tend to set a pretty high standard in terms of these short-term rental properties. I drive by, I leave my neighborhood and see the Martell's house every day, multiple times, and know that they keep that home in good shape. And the fact that they're living in the property really does give me a lot of reassurance on this in this particular case. I do think that we always are confronting this challenge of how do we manage to make some progress on affordable housing when some of the affordable housing in the community is being converted into short-term rental. In this case, I think that it's in a sense because the family is living in the house, they're both able to take advantage of affordable housing and can succeed in attracting some visitors to the community as well. So I'll be supporting this proposal. And I'll, at the appropriate time, move the resolution.
Any other?
Yes, I was just want to confirm that staff or planning commission or whomever would you agree that this has very minimal impact on the property in terms of the use?
Anyone? Bueller?
Whoever feels like it.
Staff believes there would be no negative impacts.
No negative impact?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I guess I'll move the resolution to approve.
Okay, motion for approval?
Mr. McGlinnan.
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower.
Aye.
Ms. Sadler.
Aye.
Ms. Larson.
Aye.
Mr. Hippel.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, now we'll move into board considerations. All right, contract award for audit services. Sharon.
Mr. Chairman, after this consideration, could we maybe take up a 2 or 3 minute break before we start the next one?
Yes, sir. No problem.
Evening again.
Good evening.
A request for proposal was publicly advertised for qualified and experienced firms to perform audit services for the county, the service authority, as well as the school division. 4 firms responded to the RFP, and based on the criteria of the RFP, the evaluation committee selected Cherry Beckert as the most qualified firm. A 5-year contract for the county's audit was negotiated. The contract contains the option for 5 one-year additional renewals. Staff recommends adoption of this resolution authorizing the award of audit services contract to Cherry Beckert.
Questions for staff?
One question. Is this a new auditor, or, so this is not this one we've had the last few years?
It is a different firm than we've
Different
had
firm.
before.
Okay, all right.
Correct.
Thank you.
So that was going to be my question as well. Excuse me, I know that, I think the person that we've been dealing with at one point, their firm changed names or something like that.
Yes.
So I just wanted to check. Do you see any issues with when you make the rollover to the new firm, or will that be a pretty seamless transition?
It should be seamless. There's professional standards that they have to follow during a transition period. All the documents are in our possession, so we have access to all the information that our new auditors would need.
Thank you.
And we haven't had any experience with this particular company in the past.
The county has not been engaged with Cherry Beckert in the past. I used to work for them for a number of years, but I've worked for all the firms in this area, so I've been around a while.
And now you found the right place to be.
That's right, this is home.
Any other questions? All right, I'll look for the board for discussion or motion.
I'll move the motion. Sorry.
Roll call, sir.
Ms. Sadler.
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan.
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower.
Aye.
Ms. Larson.
Aye.
Mr. Hippel.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, let's take a little couple-minute break. So we're in recess for a few minutes. All right, we'll come back out of recess, and our next item is SUP-20-0010, Hertzler Clearing and Grading. And do y'all need a staff presentation? Or do y'all want to go right into discussion? We do either way you want. We know most of what everything is.
I think it would be appropriate to maybe have staff come up and give an abbreviated, if you will, but focused primarily on, since the last time, what has occurred and what has been built into the resolution.
John? Thank you.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Following the December 13th meeting, the applicant did provide this revised master plan along with a letter from the Army Corps of Engineers, actually the preliminary jurisdictional determination as far as the wetlands on the property. On February 14th, staff from the Stormwater and Resource Protection Division met with the owner and engineer on the property to inspect the areas of the RPA impacts. And primarily those are in the areas shown in pink. In this area where there's vehicles and equipment and some material storage. And then here where there's mulch stockpiling in that area. And then additionally along the gravel driveway and wet pond in this area. As the applicant stated, SRP staff confirmed in an inspection on April 6th that work to remove impacts from those areas has commenced. And the applicant stated in their, stated to staff that the work would be completed within 6 months and that a site plan would be submitted within 60 days should the SEP be approved. Those timelines have been built into the revised conditions for numbers condition number 3 and then condition number 16 to require that timeline to be followed to comply with the SCP. And then additionally, staff did include condition number 19 to require annual inspections of the property to ensure compliance with the conditions and the SCP. And then with the attached conditions, staff does recommend approval of those, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
So would you mind explaining a little bit more about the Army Corps letter? I read that letter and wouldn't say that I had a definitive sense of what it was telling me.
Certainly, I think the applicant, the engineer, may be able to speak more in depth on it, but the letter did not identify there being any impacts to the wetlands, and they are they have the jurisdiction of that analysis.
And they were basing that off of the report filed by Roth Environmental?
That's correct.
Right, okay. That's right.
We're looking at the environmental impacts as of today, not as it would have been 20 years ago. There are no impacts today, but through the 20 years there have been impacts to the wetlands because the pond wasn't there and it was a stream. And so to say I know what they're saying there, as of right now there's no impacts. But impacts have occurred for the last 20 years, little by little. I mean, we've got a crossing, the road crossing there, we've got the pond, we've got the purple area, so you read the letter, it says, as of right now, there are nothing in place or no impacts, but there have been impacts over the 20-year period, in my opinion. That's just my 2 cents on that.
Thank you, appreciate that. Mr. Chairman, I just want to make a statement, if I may, about this.
Go right ahead.
So I was on the board 23 years ago when we voted to deny this an SUP request for this property, and I was sorely disappointed to find that that hadn't apparently mattered to the applicant. So I can tell you that my level of confidence in meeting conditions is very low. And if we're going to vote tonight on this issue, I will vote no. If the applicant wants to wait until they have met the conditions, there's a significant amount of replanting that needs to take place, movement of materials. I know some of it has started, but if they want to come back when that has been accomplished, I would look at it with fresher eyes, and I'm certainly not going to guarantee that I would support it at that point, but I know I would not support it tonight.
So you're saying if they would do everything in here that's supposed to be done,
right,
then you may consider it, if it's all done in the time frame and everything else. So then that would be a postponement until that type work was completed. Is that what you're trying to?
That's correct.
Okay, I'm just understanding. Any other board members have anything to
I
add?
would concur with that.
You would?
Yes.
Jim?
I would be fine with that.
Who? You want anything?
Still a little hesitant because even at that point,
Again, as I say, I'm not guaranteeing that I would vote for it at that later point, but I know I wouldn't tonight.
Anything else?
well, you want more now or you want it then? If we're going to wait.
That's up to you, whatever you.
Well, we don't know that the applicant's going to agree to a
Right,
postponement.
that's what we've got to do, is ask the applicant if they would agree to this. Yes, sir.
Chairman, yes, the applicant would agree to that.
And,
to be clear
on the-
what we're talking about, though, so there's no misunderstanding, what we're talking about is completion of all the restoration work, removing the materials, doing the planning, and then having SRP out to inspect, and then coming back.
Yes, that's what I'm really looking for. I guess what I'm really saying is that I don't have a lot of confidence at this point that if we approved this tonight, that the restoration that it entails would actually be accomplished. And it's very difficult to kind of monitor those sorts of things, even though the conditions call for annual visits and so forth.
The applicant is agreeable to that.
What's the timeline that we're looking at?
What's the timeline on that? 6 months?
So, Mr. Chairman, to clarify, I guess what Mr. Getty is saying is that the applicant is requesting a deferral for 6 months until such time as they complete.
You could say that, thank you.
Postponement?
Thank you for clarifying.
All right, anybody have a calendar, we can set a date to the,
That would be October.
just trying to set it with our meeting dates.
Like October 10th? October.
October 10th. Okay, then, we'd give them a postponement till October 10th. And, yes, ma'am?
So what do we do when we get noise complaints and other complaints about traffic on Barnes Road in the meantime? Who do we refer those complaints to?
Staff.
They'll be duly noted?
Yes.
Okay, because I've been getting them for years.
But, I mean, Ms. Adler, if you want to move ahead on this tonight.
I'm concerned about the fact that there's been complaints all the way back to the year 2000. I'm concerned about the impact on the property out there. I'm concerned about the fact that this pond was put in without a permit. And yeah, it may look, to your point, it might look good to the Army Corps now, but I don't think it would have looked good to them at that time. I don't know. I have concerns that even for this to go through, I personally, some of the comments that I've received from citizens and maybe some of what we've heard here tonight is I think people feel like they've just thumbed their noses at everybody else. And I fully support our small businesses. I think that we're very blessed to have the small business that we have. But the vast majority of them, they go and do their due diligence and get their permitting like they're supposed to. So I don't know how you could think that it's okay just to put a pond out there without a permit. So those, I have concerns. I truly do. I've heard the speakers tonight. I have concerns about the impacts on Barnes Road, the impacts on traffic in general out there, and the property itself.
Yeah, and as I say, if we're going to vote on it tonight, I will not support it. I would say that what really motivated my thinking about this is I want to see the restoration done, the
Completion.
replacement of the canopy and the moving things out of the RPAs and so forth. I'm not confident that would happen.
If we didn't. Yeah. I know what you're saying.
I just was going to ask staff, is it possible to get, did you make a motion, or where are we? Are we?
I think, we wouldn't be making the motion. The applicant would have to ask for the
Okay.
deferral.
We've asked for a 6-month deferral.
Okay. If that is to go into play, can we get some traffic information on accidents on Barnes Road and that type of thing when it comes back? That'd be great. Okay, thank you.
Applicants never
Especially
had an
the
accident
intersection.
on Barnes Road.
Right, I just would like to have that in the record, so.
All right,
All right.
so I'm hearing the applicant ask for a postponement until October 10th for our meeting. And by that time, they will have everything in the master plan taken care of and put back into place. And then we'll look at a vote at that date.
And
Correct.
the traffic information that Ms.
And the traffic
And
information.
please include in that traffic the intersection at Barnes Road and Old Stage, please.
Adam, does that cover everything as far as what we need?
Yes, sir.
So we need to take a vote on that as well. All right,
I'll move the motion.
move the motion. Okay.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. All right, next we're looking into the resolution considering large-scale solar farms. Mr. Kinsman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. At the board's March 14, 2023 meeting, members expressed concern that goals of the Natural Resources Plan regarding solar farms have not been completed. You asked for a resolution directing staff to work to complete those goals and to not place any large-scale solar farms on your agenda until that time, or March 2024, which is a full calendar year from that particular meeting. So I've brought that resolution before you, and it's in your packet. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions for staff?
I had a question in that the speakers that we had earlier who said they had been in the process for, I had thought when we had done things in the past, if we had things in the hopper, they weren't impacted. So I'm just trying to get clarification that, because we kind of went back, it looked like, and grabbed, because if they'd been working with staff since October, or what's the?
Yes, ma'am. So that would be grandfathering it in, and that is something the board can do. It wasn't something that was asked of me, so I did not put it in the resolution, but you can certainly add that.
Okay.
Is that the only case that we have currently?
Yeah, that was going to be my next
The
question.
only application that's been actively,
So do we just make a motion to amend the resolution to grandfather in current applicants?
Yes, ma'am. And I would, if you give me just a second to sort of massage that language to make sure that we capture just that one and not others.
When was that application put in? Before you asked for the resolution or after?
I think it's been before.
We'll gladly switch spots with planning director.
Go too far. Where are you going? Where are you going? Go too far. We'll need to verify those dates. So the distinction there is really when they started the conceptual plan review process versus when they submitted their special use permit application. You know, when we've done these things before, but for some additional language, if you would like so as part of this, traditionally what we have done, we've done one of these before, say on sort of the short-term rentals or some of the other ones, is we've continued to process them, had the full staff review, had the public hearing, with the planning commission and at least gotten through that process, and then it's waited until such date that the board directive says, okay, it's okay to now put these back on the agenda. So it sounds like you have two options. We could continue that way, or you could, by grandfathering that one in, they could continue, would go through planning commission, show up for the board. We don't have any other ones in the hopper that have been submitted. And so separate and apart from this new application that would come back to you, we would work separately on a parallel course on the requested work item. But whatever staff comes up with as part of this work item would not impact, would not influence, would not factor into this other one if you grandfather them in. It would just be a completely separate, kind of like you've done on these other three.
I guess my concern is that I don't want anyone to, I believe that we need a policy. I just don't want, if somebody was already working through the process, that's just a tough kind of pulling up a rug under somebody, and I'm sure we've probably done it in the past, not meaning, with not any ill harm meant. So that's why I asked the question.
I can see what you're saying with that. My only concern with that is that we might end up with a situation like we're dealing with now if we don't have, what do we do?
Let me ask a quick question.
Well,
I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
So how do we handle that if there's no guidelines in place and they're already in the hopper? How do we avoid a weird situation like what we're dealing with right now?
That one, but for any additional guidance, staff would continue to process that as we did the first three, and that would be consideration with the currently adopted comprehensive plan and conditions designed to mitigate impacts.
Okay, and with the resolution that I asked to be brought forward, typically are those just to shift gears a little bit, it's not uncommon for us to ask staff to reach out to consultants to help with policies, to investigate, to bring information.
That wouldn't be an issue at all
Oh,
for them to provide input into that process.
Okay, and based on conversations I've had, you would still need a considerable amount of time because they would be working, you would have to confer with them, you'd have to get it to us. It would still be a process, correct?
It'd be a process regardless, and I realize there's still some board discussion and deliberation to take place to firm up whatever that timeline is. In this instance, there was an earlier analogy to some of the citizen groups that were formed as part of the cultural and natural assets plan. Staff was not contemplating that complete or really sort of full establishment of a citizen process to guide that. Obviously, we would need to, for some of the specialized needs and some of the specialized knowledge about the industry and benchmarking what some of the other localities are doing across the state, staff very much would need some resources to work with a consultant who's knowledgeable in that, has worked with other Virginia localities already. There are a couple of those out there. I think that request may be showing up on a near future board agenda for your consideration. So even though we would not propose at this point to be sort of establishing a full sort of citizen developer committee process, certainly that process would continue to be open and transparent, and but anyone really interested in that process could provide input into that.
So how do we need to so how would they provide, just in public comment? Or how do they do that, where it becomes more something other than just, hey, I have an idea, and it's a constructive way of approaching this? How do we address that in a resolution or in process?
Yeah, I don't know that you've got to necessarily do it in resolution. What we have done on some of our previous work efforts, say with some of these ordinance amendments, is, once we've sort of firmed up a timeline, once we've firmed up what some of those milestones are, we, like I say, for some of the ordinance amendments, we publish those on the website. Certainly we've got the current applicant's contact information. We've been working with them already on that, we can keep them in the loop that way. So it would not really be limited to just showing up, say, to this forum or to planning commission. They could call staff, we'll make those milestones, dates sort of known, and what our tentative work plan is on those when we get that developed, depending on ultimately the time frame directed by the board.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I ask, the one that's in the hopper right now, what is your projection of if it proceeded through normal staff review and planning commission, when it would potentially be available to come to our board?
That I'll need to get back to you on. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't believe it's in a spot where it's ready for this next PC, but don't hold me to that. I may find that out.
Okay.
You happen to know this acreage on that one?
I don't know it off the top of my head. It's 130 acres. Yeah. Up at Anderson's Corner, you hook a left, and it's one of those first big ones right on the left, one of those first big parcels there.
The only thing I'd be worried about is once we put this plan together and say, this is what we want, maybe it's a distance, maybe it's a roadway, maybe it's where you can't see it from certain areas, or that sort of thing. Maybe it's not on farmland, maybe it's not in, other areas. If we continue to approve them or not approve them, depending on the cases that come in front of us, with having this document that says these are the areas that a solar farm could go, we may, by continuing to put one in some place we shouldn't, that later we're going to see, okay, the cultural assets are this, or the farming assets are this, or the view shed is this, and not knowing those. I think that's the reason that we all came together and figured, hey, we need a policy that says this fits in here. And, not that I want to slow down anybody who's coming through, but, I'd have pause not having that information voting on a case coming in front of me.
I read about a case in another locality in Virginia where they talked about, the applicant was talking about having fencing up. And I think they were asked, well, is it going to be wooden fencing? Is it going to be metal fencing? One way or another, there was a problem with the fencing, no matter which kind that was used. And if and until we don't have something specific in place that's been looked into and investigated and thoroughly vetted till we know we're protecting the surrounding community and make sure we're not going to have an issue, I've got a little bit of hesitation. And I understand that they've been working towards this, and it's not saying that they're not going to maybe eventually get approved. I don't know. But until then, we don't know. And then by the time they're before us, they've gotten so far along in the process. Well, then what? So I don't know. I'm a little hung up on that particular one.
How quickly, Paul, could you put this together?
Put what together?
I know with the information that we would need.
See.
I know that, we just talked in March during our retreat that staff is so thin, and we were just told earlier that we got a lot of wasted staff around here, so maybe we'll take the wasted staff and put them in there. But, we're so thin now, we can't get done what we're doing. And so we're going to bring a consultant in to help that process, but they're going to have to go to staff and go, what is your policy here? What are you doing here? How did you change this? What goes in there? What are all these things? So staff's going to have time to spend with them as well, showing them what we're doing in James City County. So with all that, are we talking 6 months? We talking a year? We talking just roughly? I know you don't have the crystal ball with you. You probably left it to the office. But if you could tell us kind of working with, I know I'm putting you right on the spot. I apologize.
No, that's okay.
We're trying to be respectful of the fact that you're shorthanded.
Yes.
We are down staff for short. Obviously, things that the board already knows. I think you all have already identified several ordinance amendments by resolution previously that are actively working through the process. There's one or two of those a couple of those that will bubble up to your board meeting in another 30 days. We've got one or two that are already in the hopper after that, in addition to some of our other work plans. So, honestly, I'm gonna stand up here and say, tell me when you want it, I'll back into it. But realistically, we're gonna have to work through the procurement process for the consultant. Staff is gonna want to have a little bit better understanding from the board about the scope of work that you would like to see back, right? Because policies and citing guidance can run a full spectrum. You earlier case tonight, you had short-term rentals, got 4 bullet points for that in the comp plan. Or, are you really sort of looking back for, 8 or 9 pages worth of analysis and do a comprehensive review of what some other localities are doing and kind of pull a lot from our existing plans? There's always questions about, how many layers deep should we add in on the technical side for stormwater from DEQ. There's other sort of model SUP conditions. Is it just aesthetics? Is it trying to do the soil? So, it's tough to say.
A lot.
It is a lot. A lot of it's going to depend on scope of work. If you give us a time, my answer will be we will rearrange. There may be some other things that we're currently working on get pushed back. There may be some things that we aren't able to get to. If this is a board priority, we can certainly look at those. That's a very real.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just say, we're spending a lot of time talking about the broader policy, and I think we've got a more immediate question to answer, and that is, what happens to this application? My recollection was that Ms. Adler, you made the proposal for this consideration of policies in February or March when we voted on the other solar plan. It was pretty recent, right?
Mm-hmm. It was.
Yes.
Yeah. And this, obviously, if there had been discussions going on since October, there's been a fair amount of investment. Now, you can always vote against something if you feel like it's going to be an issue, but I think there is a kind of sense in which we need to be, on the one hand, respectful of the property owner and the developer who's proposing this solar farm, and on the other hand, I really do think that we ought to make a decision in a way that if the board decided to approve it, it could qualify for the Dominion program, so that some of our residents would qualify for that subsidized energy that would be available through the solar project. It doesn't take away our ability to make a decision one way or the other, but there's been a considerable amount of investment, and there's an opportunity cost to delay. So I guess I'd ask if we have a sense of where people are on that.
Well, I would agree with that, because I am all about a policy. My concern about solar is what I've been hearing from my VACO counterparts and some concerns that they've had, but on the other hand, I don't want anyone to feel like we changed course, and that we had somebody that was already working through the process and then we've put the brakes on it, realizing that it may look different than what we ultimately want it to look like. And I think we've also got some lessons learned that we would want staff to really work closely with to make sure that those things are not happening as they're moving through this process with this applicant. So that's because we're not going to get, it sounds as though we're not going to be able to get where we need to be. I mean, what if we said, because I think we have a colleague that's would like to put up a different timeline perhaps, which is one that you're saying that we may not be able to make. And then, I mean, what would we need when would we need that application to be in? When would we need our policy? The applicant that's been working on this for some time to then get approval to then be able to line up for Dominion if approved. What's that look like?
Connect with us.
Sorry.
Well, no, that's okay. You know, I really am sort of thinking back to some of the other, just if nothing else for consistency and some of the other board precedents in working through some of the other ordinance items for situations just like this. And I think, you know, if I may, if it helps, you know, historically it's been if somebody's made a formal application or has been in discussions with staff, that one sort of continues on. And, you know, obviously, should a resolution be passed tonight, we've had several examples where we're able, whatever next applicant walks in the door, we're able to hand up this resolution. You know, we did it with watershed, updating the watershed plans with some of the residential density items. We did it many years ago on the first round of Airbnbs before we started the comp plan update. We held up the resolution and said the board is actively working on this. They may choose to postpone you. Otherwise, we're working on this and take heed in whether or not you would like to proceed or not. But it's at that point, you're not really left with somebody getting this process started after they've been in the door for 4 months. You know, again, so that could be that part for the grandfathering piece. You know, again, on a timeline, I don't know if you've made that decision, if it necessarily affects the timeline for when you'd see stuff back. If you're looking for, you know, half a dozen bullet points, something maybe analogous to short-term rentals, obviously that's a shorter-term work product that we could probably get to in 6 months. If you're looking for 3 or 4 full pages of analysis and want us to canvass all the other localities in the state for benchmarking and best practices, or maybe things out there we haven't even thought of yet, that's going to, you know, that level of effort, really having some good engagement activities with the industry, that might take closer to a year.
I would say then keep the one moving, and we don't want anybody to ever feel like, you know, even though we don't know what's going on sometimes, and far as meeting with staff and discussing, okay, this is what I'm thinking about doing, until staff gets it all prepared, brings it to us. So, you know, I don't want to stop them from their process. And I mean, I don't think any of the other board members do. I think now our thing is, okay, what's the time frame for this resolution? Do we put a time frame on it? I know that Mr. Eisenhower wants to bring something forward to consider as well as a time frame. But I think what you're saying is we'll try to meet those dates, but if we don't, we can push it out 3 months, 2 months. Go ahead, sir.
If you don't mind, I would like to propose the alternate resolution, and let me just outline exactly what my discussions with staff today and how it focused, because I was very careful about trying not to overburden staff and to you know, to do this attack this process very reasonably. Those of you who have the alternate resolution, it's all the same until you get down to the first whereas. And what I decided I think was very important was there are 2 aspects. One is a board policy, and the other is we have a lot of studies that are sort of levied or required under the cultural and natural assets plan, which I think are important because they are very much like watershed plans. They are supplementary documents that provide us specific details related to that subject, whether it's the watersheds or whether it's the cultural and natural resources, that we then use in making decisions on rezonings. So I separated out and made the first now therefore be it resolved that the board does hereby direct staff to analyze the manpower, financial assets, and recommended work timeline that would be required to conduct the analysis of the goals listed in the natural and cultural assets plan, and to present that information to the board on its July 25th, 2023 business meeting, so that the board can determine the most effective way to proceed with meeting these goals. What that does is it's basically a scope of work for staff to come back and tell us, okay, if we want to do these 3 studies that are outlined in the resolution here, and look at all of that, here's what it's going to take. And I would anticipate that at the July meeting, they would tell us that it's going to cost this much money. We may need an outside consultant. You may want to engage the community. There are all sorts of different things they could do, but they would lay out a timeline, and that timeline could be 6, 12 months, whatever it takes to get that done and get it done properly. But what I was more concerned about and really focused on in the next resolution was be it further resolved that the board does hereby direct staff to retain an outside consultant to assist both staff and the board in devising a comprehensive board policy on large-scale solar farm projects, and to present the draft policy document to the board at its September 12th regular meeting. Now, that's 5 months out. What I asked staff about was, number one, I don't want to put them in the position of having to do all of this work. I think from my discussions with them, we would really benefit from getting a good outside consultant to deal with the issues of VML, VACO, other counties, where we could draw together all of that material. I do not anticipate that September meeting would necessarily be the final document. But what it would be is it would be an opportunity for them to come back to us and say, hey, here's what we've collected. And the board can then take a look at it and say, yeah, we think you're on the right track, or no, we want you to go back and tweak this or do that, whatever. We then have a period of maybe a couple of months, whatever, to finally come up with a policy. I highlight the policy as opposed to ordinance because this should be a board policy, in my opinion. And it basically outlines for any applicant what the board is going to be looking for, what we are willing to accept and what we're not willing to accept when they come in and make an application to us. So that there's a very straightforward process of knowing what we're looking for. I think that in this process, it would be really critical for each one of us individually to sit down with staff and the consultant and talk about what we personally, as supervisors, think ought to be in that policy. Because this is a board policy. I don't want to put staff in the position of writing a board policy necessarily without having really good input and guidance from all 5 of us. And then the consultant can blend that with all of the other stuff that we're finding from all over the state and bring it back to us. And like I said, that gives you a time period. I was looking at it, I said, be it further resolved, the board directs staff not to place any large-scale solar farm application on the board's calendar until its first meeting in October or earlier time. That's 6 months out. I don't know whether that may be, I think I'd like to shoot for that. If it turns out that we're not ready and we need to push it out, we can push it out. I agree that I think we probably ought to allow what's in the hopper to go ahead and proceed right now. But I got to be honest with you, when it comes to the board for approval, it's going to be brutal because we won't necessarily have all of this stuff fixed. I don't know if we can get through this and get by September or October and get a policy in place where we could address that. That would be a good. I'm just concerned that I think we need the board policy on solar sooner rather than later. We need to get that policy established and in position. Then we have something to work from. So that's I have talked to all of you. Everybody has a copy of it. I've basically read it for the audience, and I would propose that we substitute that resolution with the understanding that those timelines are negotiable and flexible.
The only problem for me with leaving them flexible, it's for me, if I were an applicant, I would have a hard time knowing what I could do when. Mm-hmm. Because if we have, like Paul had mentioned for some of the other pauses, if you will, that we've done, he's able to say, the board is working on this. Here is your date a year from now. Enter at your own risk. Whereas if we keep moving this all around, people don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. I think it becomes a little more unfair to applicants and landowners and project developers to know from time to time where we're going with it. If Paul thinks that having it a year out, and I don't disagree with some of the things that you have in here and the, the way in which you want to get to the end, I just think that timeline is a little too short based on what Mr. Holt was saying. And then if we do have that extended timeline, that lets everyone know that we're working on this. Here is a date that's more doable for staff working with consultants in order for them to achieve what we're looking for. I'm scared that we're going to cut it off too soon and we're not going to have the product that we're looking for.
What if we take the, for the board calendar and move that instead of October, make it December or January? I'd hate for somebody to go, well, hopefully they'll have this all done by October. I want to be on that first meeting. And then we don't get it done on October, and that might cause an issue. Still try to hit the other dates.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be tough to hit them, but we can still try to hit them.
I have no problem with moving that last one from October to December.
Okay.
That would give you a couple of extra months.
Right.
What I want to do, though, is I want to make sure is that if we can work with staff and the consultant to get the policy, the sooner, the better.
Yeah.
Okay? That's one. And once that's done, then we can go back and revisit and we can say whatever. But this at least gives people an idea that it's going to be a while. And I'm probably okay with leaving, I think we need to stick with the precedent. If somebody has something in the hopper, we need to let them at least bring it forward if they want to. They have the option of holding it off if they want. We could give them deferrals and stuff. But that, yeah, go ahead.
So that sounds like a plan, to December. I just wanted to follow up because Paul asked the question about what kind of policy we were looking for. I was looking for a more extensive than the first one that you mentioned, the bullet points. So.
I am too.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Mr. Chairman.
For something that defines what a large-scale project is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I've had a minute to work on a grandfathering clause, so work for either resolution, it would be it further resolved that any owner application for a large-scale solar farm associated with a conceptual plan submitted to the county on or prior to April 10, 2023 may be placed on the board's calendar following consideration by the Planning Commission.
Okay. That's it. We just add that to the very end of the resolution. And the date then is, and the last one before that is December of 2023.
Yep.
So moved.
So what's the date again?
December 2023.
December 2023.
Do we have to?
instead of October.
Okay.
Okay, gotcha. 2020.
Got it?
So it's clear that the current application is going forward?
Going forward.
Okay,
Yeah. We're not going to stop them.
right.
All right.
And we've got a motion on the
That's a
floor?
motion?
Yeah, motion, sir.
Everybody okay? All right, motion on the floor.
Okay.
Roll call.
Mr. McGlennon?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Easy
All
peasy.
right. We're looking for board requests and directives. Anyone?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
while this conference is going on,
We'll let them work their issues out.
I did, we had earlier, the director of the Williamsburg Regional Library was here, and I just wanted to, she's not here at the moment, but did want to congratulate her on being named one of the 50 top most influential women in Virginia. And it's a real feather in our caps, I think, because of the fact that she is heading our premier library system.
Yes.
I also wanted to mention that one of the organizations that operates under the guidance of James City County, the James City County Williamsburg Master Gardeners are having their plant sale on Saturday, May 6th, from 9 a.m. to 12 noon. It will take place at the Williamsburg Botanical Gardens in Freedom Park, and now I can go home safely. Thank you.
I'll try to tell my mother so she won't keep calling the hotline and Terry has to keep calling her back. She doesn't answer her phone.
Okay, I appreciate the indulgence of the board for a minute. We have, we're going to put up on the screen a little Vietnam War Veterans Day that was held on March 29th. I think it's the third time we've done it, and it was a raging success. The county, the local Vietnam Veterans Chapter 957, the Department of Virginia, Virginia Department of Veteran Services, and the local Daughters of the American Revolution all helped co-sponsor this. And we set the tent and 150 chairs, and we estimate the crowd was probably over 200. Wow. So we've had, it's probably the most successful we've had in a long time. It was really a very interesting, and I want to give special credit to Mr. Michael Milner, who is a constituent of mine, lives in Ford's Colony. He's a retired Air Force, and he works as a volunteer with Parks and Rec, and he came out last year and this year and did all of the photographs for the event. You know, he has graciously allowed us to show these on tonight. So it's about a 60-second blurb that I think our audiovisual people have put together. And I will tell you, I was talking to him earlier about getting that done. They mentioned that maybe next year they want to go out and do some video work. So it's an interesting group of people. We're all getting really old, and there are fewer and fewer of us every year, and it's really good to see the community come out and honor the people who serve. So with that, if you could roll the credits, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Appreciate that very much. Thank you for your service as well, Jim. Thank you. Sue? Have anything?
Thank you.
Can I add one more thing?
Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
On next Thursday, April 20th, I'm sponsoring a first of a series of community meetings in my district, in the Roberts District. That one will be focused on the Kings Mill area, and it will be in this room from 6 to 7:30.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry I was unable to attend that, Jim. That looked very touching, and I'm so grateful. I remember as a little girl watching the Vietnam War and prisoners of war but the actual war. I don't think people fully understand, even with 24-hour news, exactly what it was like for this nation during that time. I certainly appreciate your service, and I hope to get there next year for sure. So I want to give a plug for the trash pickup. I'm going to be out of town on Saturday, so I can't help. Let the record show that I always try to pick up litter wherever I am, because I very much appreciate what Peg is doing, and this town is way too trashy. There's no excuse for it. We're getting better, but we've got to keep doing better. I was walking the Capitol Trail a week ago, and there was a gentleman out in waders, and he was not taking down the beavers, which has sometimes been an issue on the Capitol Trail. Though I did run into the Department of, is it still Gameland Fisheries? They were going and visiting we have a huge beaver problem on Route 5. They're very close to Route 5. They're causing some flooding. They did go out to check the pond levelers, so they are working on that because people will reach out to staff and I to find out what's going on there. But back to my gentleman that was, anyway, he said that he noticed all the trash in the marsh on the Capitol Trail and knew that he had waders at home and went home, got them on, just was picking them up. I did make a plug to please think about joining the Clean County Commission. But, there's just people like that doing stuff like that every day in our county, and I'm grateful for that. So I hope people can participate. I hope there's got to be more than 2 people in Berkeley that are going to go out and pick up trash on Saturday. I just know it. But I know that even if you can't participate on Saturday, that there's always people that care about the community and will be out doing that. So, and then I look forward to attending the service awards this Friday. Thank you. And thanks for a very productive meeting. Appreciate everybody's. I know everybody's been working on all these issues for quite some time, so thank you.
Thank you. All right, I can't follow what Jim and all the vets that have done for us for all the years and all that, so I just want to say hats off. Thank you very much, and thank the whole group, and let them know how much this board appreciates all their service, and it's an honor to be in a community with such dedicated people.
I think it's really important to everybody in our community that are veterans that James City County helps sponsor this thing. That really it means a lot to our citizens. So
that's great, and we care about our vets, so thank you, and thanks for leading that for us. All right, looking to you for a report.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, 2 quick events I'd like to just share. One is our 2023 Summer Camp Fair, which will hold Sunday, April 16th at our Recreation Center at 5301 Long Hill Road from 11 o'clock to 3 p.m. Your parents and kids can come attend and learn about what's offered this summer from pre-K through high school. Camp registrations are accepted on site, so it's just an information session for our community. Again, Sunday, April 16th, 11 o'clock to 3 p.m. at our Recreation Center on Long Hill Road. We also have a rental fair scheduled for landlords, property managers, and renters that will be held Monday, April 17th. Again, at our Recreation Center, 5:30 to 7 p.m. We'll have guest speakers that will present information on homelessness, eviction court navigation, second chance housing, and fair housing. And certainly would encourage people that have an interest in housing to come to that. If there are questions, 259-5340. Again, 757-259-5340. But something this Sunday, April 15th or 16th for camps, and then Monday, April 17th, both at the Recreation Center are for housing-related concerns.
Do you get a, so we had the household chemical collection on Saturday at War Hill, I believe, sponsored by VISPA. Did they let you know how, because I took many gallons of paint there and I was thinking, oh, I'll be the only person. There were so many people there. So I was curious if you hear how successful it was.
I hadn't, but I will find back out. I know I talked with several residents in my neighborhood who had participated in that. I think that and shredding paper events tend to be very popular in our community, but I certainly, they'll have some numbers on that, and I'll be happy to provide that.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, next we'll look at a closed session. Need a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Consulting with legal counsel and briefings by staff members and consultants pertaining to actual or probable litigation where such consulting on brief and open meetings would adversely affect the negotiation or litigation posture of the public body, and consulting with a legal counsel employed by or retained by a public body regarding specified legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel pursuing to Virginia Code 2.2-3117 and 8, especially regarding the 1, stormwater facilities, and 2, potential special use permit violation. I have a motion?
Yes.
I have a motion. Roll call, sir.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, we're in closed session. All right, come out of closed session, look for certification.
Mr. Chairman, I move to certify that we only spoke about those items we indicated we would speak about in closed session.
Thank you. Roll call, please, sir.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, that's all for tonight. Next, I'll look for adjournment until 1 PM on April 25th, 2023 for a business meeting.
So moved.
Motion.
So move, roll call.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Go ahead.
You'll have to put 4 yeses.
3 hours and
Adjourning
8
us?
minutes
We're adjourned.
with one pea break.